Hello, my name is Marco Ciavolino. I've been a member of NMTC for many years now. My company does general marketing communications. We develop STEM training materials, do many web development projects, graphic design, photography, and video, as well as research and development. And as the founder of TechBrick Robotics, a Harford County, Maryland-based robotics organization, I invite you to visit my website and take a look around. There's lots to see, and yes, that picture on the right really is me when I was very, very young. You can download a PDF which has all active links, all the links you'll see in here, and I invite you to do so after the presentation. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about backing up data, because little organizations and medium-sized ones and even very large ones probably don't do this well, and the consequences are really pretty significant. Here are some stats from this article that I've referenced here. The average cost of data loss, approximately $141 per data record for a medium organization. It can cost someone $7,900 per minute, which if you figure out, not impossible if you have 400 or 500 employees. And the costs are just huge. And not only is it just the cost of recovering the data, but also the cost, the loss of time, the loss of productivity, the distraction that is caused by this. So it really does need to be paid attention to. Now, one of the main reasons to have absolutely thorough, impeccable backups are cyber attacks. They are on the rise. It is absolutely insane how many attacks there are every day. In the news today, I read about 3 or 4 that are affecting tens of thousands of websites and servers. So it's not really if, but probably when you have a cyber attack that restricts your data, and you want to absolutely make sure you're prepared to recover from that. The attacks are relentless, increasing in frequency and sophistication every day. The second, of course, is just failures. You have a modern computer infrastructure is quite complex. It may seem all sort of inert, just flashing on a shelf somewhere, but you have a lot of mechanical devices in a network, including hard drives, optical drives, tape backup switches, and so forth. Anything that moves or spins can wear out or break. And even regular hardware can fail over time, hubs, routers, and so forth. And external resources can fail, like, for instance, your power or internet access, or the cooling in your building, or security mechanisms that you may be relying on. And of course, natural disasters, which you can't really control, but earthquakes, tornadoes, and so forth can cause a huge interruption. And you really need to consider every scenario and plan for it, because if you don't, you will be in trouble. You need to plan. You're going to experience failure. You need to be ready for it. So the first thing that any organization should do, whether you're just one little person or you're a huge organization, is really understand where all your data is. Now, that may seem incredibly obvious, but you would be surprised. Do you know where all your key data is stored, actually stored and organized? Do you back up local computer accounts? Now, big organizations probably have user profiles locked down, but many, many small and medium organizations I've been in have all kinds of valuable data sitting on people's desktops. Do employees have data stored on remote systems? Are they using OneDrive? Are they using Google Drive? Are they using Dropbox that's not associated directly with your network? Or do you rely on external services? If you're using external tools for various functions like document management or billing, do you have a way to back up or at least understand what data is there in a meaningful way? And this is often overlooked today, but do you have key data stored in hard copy form? If you do, and you only have one copy of it, then that could be a problem if there was a natural disaster. And then what security restrictions must remain in place? It's so many backup programs, because you're usually doing it as the administrator, will say, do you want me to remove passwords and security when you back up? And they do sort of by default. So you want to make sure, if you're in a high security environment, that your files that are backed up maintain the same level of security that you expect from the system itself. And do you have data stored on older technologies? Don't recount on recovering it later. If your company has files stored on SciQuest drives or on 8-inch floppies or on 3 1/4-inch floppies or a dozen other formats, Bernoulli formats that we're out of. If you need that data, get it converted now, because it is just amazing. You may come back 2 years from now and not be able to convert it. It's worthwhile. So now you got to figure out what is a backup, right? So here's a great article from Cloudian, and you can go look at it yourself. But basically, it's copying all critical data to another location, to another form, so that it can be recovered or immediately used. Now, as we'll see in a few minutes, in the second point here, that involves a lot of different kinds of data, not just static files, but also dynamic files like operating systems, configurations, registry files, Exchange servers, and so forth, that may represent hundreds of files to operate, not just a single file. It needs to be backed up in a meaningful way. So what do you back up? Well, you need to consider every form of data. Static files, these are files that are edited and saved. Examples: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, JPEG, PNG, MP4, Photoshop, or any program that produces a single saved file. Dynamic files are those that are changing constantly. This is communication servers, document servers, linked resources, key data stores and databases, Exchange servers, and so forth. And then device configurations. If you're in a small office or a small business, you probably just have just a basic router or switch sitting there. But big organizations have sophisticated routers and hubs and switches that are programmed, and those configurations should be backed up. They rarely are. And then other network configurations related to the operation of the network. Every device should be identified and its configuration recorded in case it has to be replaced. So any backup solution you opt for, whether you're a small business or an enterprise, you're going to use a combination of software and hardware. There's a great article here from Backup Systems, the top backup vendors. Small businesses are going to use external hard drives, and individuals the same as I do. There's a wide range of integrated software solutions for mid-size and enterprise tools that will basically dynamically back up everything in an orderly way. And there's many cloud-based solutions as well. And cloud-based solutions are great. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but there are some limitations. As far as software goes, small and medium businesses can rely on cloud-based solutions. Here's an article from PC Mag with the best. Personally, I use Backblaze. I found them as simply the most reliable, simple, least intrusive product that I have seen. Near real-time backup provides can protect multiple devices, rapid recovery of small numbers of files, and so forth. So I have this running on my 2 primary workstations and my laptop. It's $70 a year per machine. It's backed up literally just minutes after a file is saved, and they maintain a 30-day rolling window. So I always have all of that, and if I need to get a lot of files back, they will send them to me on a hard drive upon request. So it's very, very effective. Enterprises need a whole different scenario. They need a complete solution. They need a solution that will back up every device, every server, every type of dynamic component, maintain security, and so forth. And they're very, very sophisticated. Again, I'm referencing 2 of Backblaze's solutions, but there are many other. Backblaze, Amazon, Google offer these starters, which basically are massive hard drive arrays that you can back up thousands of terabytes to eventually seed your backup. And then you send it to them and they start it. And they have a whole range of services. Again, I invite you to look at these as examples. Look elsewhere if you want to see further. But what good is a backup if you don't test it? I have heard way too many stories of people that faithfully carried their backups off-site every night, only to find a couple of years later when something failed that the backup just simply wasn't working. It was just a blank tape or it was corrupted. You need to absolutely make sure they work. Dynamic backups should be fully restored to new hardware and tested, and compatible hardware should be available. For example, you almost cannot find a PC anymore that has a 3.5-inch floppy drive in it. So if you want to recover files from that, well, you need to use a USB one or or some similar thing. And you cannot find one that has a 3.5 and 5.5 inch floppy in it, except very rarely on eBay, and even then it's hard. So you want to make sure that any key pieces of hardware that you have access to it, or you have one sitting on the shelf. The second is, can you restore it? So here's a case study. I got to visit Walmart many years ago, right after they had launched a new data center that was geographically diverse, and it was basically a real-time failover. Now keep in mind that all of Walmart's transactions globally go through Bentonville, Arkansas. Basically, I calculated it out to about $1 million per minute if they go down, but they don't, because they have this real-time failover system. And the question to ask is, what is your per minute value? If you have 500 employees and you're down for a day, well, that's 500 times 8 times your billable rate or your hourly equivalent rate. That's a lot of money. So it's really important to make sure that you have a backup that works. So you need a written recovery plan. You can't be scrambling around. So I call this minute 1, minute 2, minute 3, because it's really almost that tight. So do the people in your organization know what to do if their computer is attacked? Do they know who to call immediately? Do they understand the consequences of not doing that? Who do they notify? And what are their specific action steps? And then what is the specific action steps of the IT department in general? Minute 2, do you have a way to assess the impact? Do you know how far it's spread? Do you understand how the failure of this piece of hardware is affecting your organization? You need to let people know immediately. And then minute 3 is, you obviously want to secure any backup data, get any off-the-shelf hardware, get it running, contact your insurance company. But if you don't have these written out step by step, you won't be able to do it in a crisis. This is my backup strategy, and I'm going to start with a short story. A few years ago, we had a lightning strike literally within feet of our house. The pulse came up the cable, our Comcast cable, but also there was sort of an EMP effect that hit the house. And so it blew out our VCR that we had at that time, our DVD player, one of my routers, one of my workstations, and blew a couple of hard drives away in one of my other workstations. I did not have proper backups. And when I called Drive Savers, who are the preeminent drive recovery, data recovery organization in the world, I was talking to them at 2 in the morning, and I'm saying to her, wow, you are really relaxing. And she said, well, we're trained to be so. And by the way, we have suicide counselors on staff 24/7. And I was like, really? And she said, yeah. People are sometimes in such a panic. And I was able to recover most of my data. My insurance paid for it. But it was a huge interruption in work, and a lesson I was not going to ever have to learn again. So this is what I do. I'm an individual consultant. I'm a C corporation. I have 30 terabytes of active storage on 2 workstations in my office. My main dynamic files are just basically Outlook, and I have many very large files. I have more than 2.1 million addressable files on my network that I have access to at any time. So I have 4 levels of backup that I do. Level 1 is Backblaze, as I mentioned. It is running real time on both workstations and my laptop. Anything I do is backed up within minutes of the time it's saved. I can recover individual files very quickly. Large volumes of files I can get on a recovery disk. And they maintain a 30-day rolling window. So if I got cryptoed today, I could request a backup from yesterday. And I would just lose a day of work. Level 2 is I use the Windows system backup versioning tool that's built into Windows 10. And I have an 8 terabyte hard drive just sitting behind my monitor. Just runs all the time. And it maintains versions of every file that I save and local backup. And I've used it a few times. It's just totally invisible. You don't have to worry about it. Level 3 is a desktop backup of core data daily. So I have an 8 terabyte drive just sitting to the left of my chair here. And every night, or sometimes more than once a day, I will mount the drive by powering it up. Use BB Backup, which is one of the coolest little tools ever. I invite you to go look at it. I back up all the files that have changed, then I power the drive off. Why do I do that? Well, nothing can touch it if it's powered off and disconnected. So even if I got cryptoed right now, I could literally just take this hard drive, plug it into another workstation, and all my data is there. And then weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how much work I've done, I back up to an external set of hard drives and put them in my fireproof safe. Now, what I don't do is take something off-site, which I probably should, except that Backblaze sort of covers me on that area. This makes sure that all my data is accessible all the time, even if my entire house was destroyed. I'd be able to recover everything. Now let's talk about some costs, as I was asked when I did this live. So for a small business, basically Backblaze is $70 per year per machine with all the data you can store, as many of services are, and a few $100s on hard drives. BV backup is $50 per workstation. It's really almost nothing compared to the potential loss. And so it's very easy to set up. Enterprise solutions are totally different. They need to be estimated by your vendors and require substantial research and configuration, but you should do it if you're not. It's very, very important. And then what about cyber insurance? So here's an article from Wikipedia and their definition. So this obviously is an emerging field. It is complex. It is difficult. You want to work with a qualified agent and your attorneys. If you're an enterprise, you should have cyber insurance. You obviously will be required to have a high level of compliance and preparation, as I've outlined here. But it cannot replace the possible outcomes due to missed deadlines and loss of corporate goodwill. So it doesn't replace an actionable plan. If you're a law firm and you've got 250 lawyers working and you go down for 2 days and you miss court filings and you miss deadlines, it doesn't matter if you get paid if you get coverage for that. You physically affected hundreds of clients. So it's really important that organizations take this very, very seriously. So what should you do next? Well, number one, review your current backups or plan for them. So just ask your IT department, do you have a written backup plan if you're an employee or you're a manager? Interesting question. Do a data survey, as I outlined earlier. Do you really know where all your data is? Do you really know? Make sure you do. Take an assessment of your physical documents, your paper. Law firms and engineering firms have lots of paper still. Is that to be backed up, secured in some way that it's recoverable? And ask for a recovery plan from your IT department or your IT consultant. What exactly do we do if something happens? And do all the updates that you have to do. Make sure you thoroughly test backups, as I said. Make sure the backups that you're taking are valid. Make sure they can be restored. And create an active recovery scenario where you tell your IT department, okay, I want you to restore our Exchange server right now to this other piece of hardware. Train employees so they're aware of what kinds of things can damage the network, whether it be a crypto attack or other kinds of malware. And do a data disaster drill. Kill the network one day and see what happens. Do people call the right numbers? Do they know what to do? And of course, do investigate cyber insurance if you're a small, medium, or large organization, but do it and do it carefully. So there you go. My goal really was basically to essentially scare you today, and I hope I did. So go ahead and delve into this and ask around your organization and see what your plans are.